First Peter chapter 4, lesson 15. When is enough ever going to be enough? First Peter chapter 4, verse 1 through 2. Therefore, Christ, having suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves likewise with the same mind, because the one suffering in his flesh has ceased from sin, in order to live his remaining time no longer for the lust of men, but for the will of God. When the flesh has suffered to this point, these thoughts are no longer an option. Will Susie go out with me? I could really use a drink. Should I cheat on my taxes? Would the boss miss the money? When a soldier attacks, he will probably get himself and others killed if he is thinking about saving his own life. He must concentrate on saving his own men and the objective. The experienced soldier knows better than most that if you seek to save your life, you will lose it. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 3 through 7. Because our past lifetime is sufficient for us to have accomplished the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in wantonness, lust, drunkenness, revelings, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries, wherein they are surprised that you are not running together with them in the same outpouring of destructive, no salvation behavior, speaking evil of you. These surprised rebellious partiers are those who will give account to the one tasked to judge the quick, that is, the living and the dead. Because for this cause was the good news also proclaimed to those walking dead, in order that they might be judged on the one hand according to men in the flesh, but live according to God in the Spirit. But the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be of sound, unimpaired mind in prayer. We will explain more about the word translated destructive, no salvation behavior and the walking dead in 3 pages. The word tasked in verse 5 is literally ready having. These 2 words gave me trouble fitting them into an English sentence until I realized that etimios, from the root word etimios, means ready, prepared. When I put this together with the next word, ekanti, meaning to hold, to seize, to have, to possess, to retain, it dawned on me that Jesus was retained to do a job he was prepared for. In other words, he was tasked to do what only he could do. This was not something he possessed as in having a thing, but having as in having to do something. Jesus has to judge because the Father ordered him to, because he was the only qualified one ready to do it. There are 3 words noted in this passage that we will look at. There are other destructive behaviors mentioned, but even a drinking Christian will admit they are not Christ in behavior. When all that Peter says here in 1 Peter 1:13, therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, be sober, and completely putting your hope upon Jesus Christ. And in 4:3 and 7, and later in 5:8, it should begin to become clear that for a walking, breathing temple of God, there should be no reason or excuse for taking in any drug that will affect or distort the emotions or mind except as medicine. First, drunkenness, impaired mind. The Greek word used in verse 3, oinophlugeias, and is made by 2 words, oinos, which is simply defined as wine, a potion, and fluo, which is defined as to boil over, bubble, prater, tattler. In other words, someone whose speech is disconnected from the control of the brain or moral restraint. It is not just a slurring of speech, but unrestrained speech, which we know from James is an indication that every other part of the person is out of control. The two words put together as the root word oinophagia, used in this verse, is defined as to bubble over, overflow, debauched with wine, drunkenness. It is a description of what happens when the command found in verse 7, be of sound, unimpaired mind in prayer, is not obeyed. The word in verse 7 is the same word found in 1 Peter 1:13, and it would be a good exercise to review that verse. One cannot be mentally sober if they are not physically sober. When someone is told to be mentally sober in any construction or situation, they must first stop drinking or taking drugs. So, was Peter saying, do not drink alcohol? Yes. Was he going beyond that to say, take this seriously, with a clear head, in control of your thinking and reasoning, able to see what is important? Probably. We know the first is true, and the second is partly the result of the first, and goes beyond not drinking, but not without abstinence. Second, destructive behavior, no salvation. The Greek word is a negative stated word. It is asotia. It is formed by the word sotia, from sozo, meaning salvation, with the letter alpha or A in front of it to indicate negation. I was often intrigued at the word dissipation used in translations. Even when I looked up the definition of the English word, 1. A scattering, dispersion. 2. A wasting or squandering. 3. Waste of time, frivolous diversion. 4. Wasteful or excessive indulgence in pleasure, intemperance, dissoluteness. It never seemed to satisfy me. Such a description could be used for playing badminton. However, playing badminton is part of a life, but this word really means there is no salvation in drinking or using any recreational drug. To state this in an affirmative way, imbibing is death, sin in a bottle, joint, pill, or needle. Fast, slow, or in any form or amount, each sip is a sip of death. Jesus is life, and he will never be found in a bottle, pill, paper wrap, or needle. There is no salvation for someone who is presently under the control of drugs. This is what Thayer's lexicon says, an abandoned man, one that cannot be saved. I am not saying a Christ-in who drinks is not a Christian. I am saying they are not listening to Peter. So when will you have the mind of Christ, that is dead to the world, and completely satisfied in Christ? When will enough be enough? When the race is over? How does it fit into verses 4 through 6 above, which say, wherein they are surprised that you are not running together with them in the same outpouring of destructive, no salvation behavior, speaking evil of you? These surprised, rebellious partiers are those who will give an account to the one tasked to judge the quick, that is, the living and the dead. Because for this cause was the good news also proclaimed to those walking dead, in order that they might be judged. I believe, in the immediate context, the dead, or as I have suggested, walking dead, rejecting and saying no to the salvation you offered them, then speaking evil about you, making fun of your goody-goody living, are those in danger of judgment.